Hi, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Christchurch Daily or Eveningly. A short thought for the day to help us to fix our eyes on Jesus. I'm really tired. That's probably quite obvious from my face, but I just recognised this evening that I'm probably nowhere near as tired as lots of people. Today, as I've been feeling pretty exhausted, I've thought lots about NHS workers and other key workers, teachers, care workers, vicars who are just inundated with need. And I've thought lots about single parents as well who are desperate for a break but can't have one. And that kind of just realisation that for almost everyone on the planet, this has been an exhausting week has led me to think about the idea of Sabbath. So for those of you that are not familiar with the word Sabbath comes from the Old Testament, and way back in Genesis, the story of how God created the world. The rhythm is that it took him 6 days to create the world, and on the seventh day he rested, and that was the Sabbath day. And then in the Ten Commandments, God commands his people to keep the Sabbath, to keep this one day set aside for rest and to worship, to keep that as a holy day. And me and my family, we try and Sabbath together on a Saturday. For lots of other families, they Sabbath on a Sunday, because that is kind of church day. It's when we gather as a family to worship God, and that can be really restful. But for us, often one of us or the other of us are involved in something in a church service or doing something that doesn't. It means it's just not very easy for us to rest on that day. So for a few years now, we have tried to Sabbath together on a Saturday. And I'm learning about it and I'm trying to get better at it. When Hamish and I first got married, we were young and passionate and zealous and a bit crazy. And almost every weeknight and every weekend we were doing stuff. We were really heavily involved with a youth and community project on our estate, and it was great, and we did so much, and so many of the things that were filling up our diaries, they were good things, but we were shattered. And by the time our first year anniversary came about, we were so close to burnout, and we were like 25. And I just, like, looking back, I don't really ever want to be in that place again where I just felt so worn thin by life, and all of life felt really unsustainable. But this week I felt close to that. At points we've had lots of different things going on, and I've just felt really tired and quite stressed. I'm shattered. But tomorrow is Sabbath, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. In traditional Jewish culture, Sabbath is a day that's set aside exclusively for rest and for worship. Sometimes people can be quite mocking to Jewish people about the Sabbath, because there's quite a strict list of rules about what you can and can't do. And you get all these kinds of ridiculous questions about, oh, can you turn on a light switch? Can you open your oven? Are you allowed to tie up your shoes? But those questions really just miss the point. That kind of questioning is asking the wrong question, and Jesus rebukes the Pharisees for doing just that in Mark chapter 2, where his disciples are picking wheat and it's a Sabbath day and they get told off. And Jesus says, you just don't understand what the point of Sabbath is, because actually God designed Sabbath to help us out. He designed Sabbath as a way of blessing us and sustaining us, and it's not meant to be a burden. It's not meant to be complicated. It's just meant to be an opportunity once a week to stop, to spend time with family, to spend time with God, to rest and to take stock of who we are and where we're at. And this week has re-emphasised for me that our culture is terrible at Sabbath. I am terrible at Sabbath, really. We just don't place a high value on rest. When you ask someone how they are in relation to their job, the gut response is, I'm busy. And that's seen as something commendable, that it's a good thing to be busy. And I think the reality is that many of us really don't know how to rest. we don't really know what we need to do to feel rested. And so often the way that we kind of switch off from life is Netflix or Facebook, and it's actually distraction or numbing rather than doing something that's actually going to replenish our souls and give us life. So I'm trying to get better at taking Sabbath seriously, and at the moment it's really difficult because the things that we would normally choose to do as a family to give us life on a Saturday, we can't do. Our Saturday morning normally looks like some kind of outdoors adventure because we all love nature, so the woods or the beach or a river or a walk, and we can't do any of that right now. We can walk around the block, which is not quite the same thing. And then Hamish and I, we try and work really hard to make sure we both get rest on a Sabbath, so we kind of take it in turns to have time with the kids so the other one can get space. And during my space, I would normally do some form of exercise and then go and sit and have a really nice coffee and read a book. But at the moment, the gym is closed and Costa is also closed, so my Sabbath plans are a little bit screwed. And for Hamish, Hamish and I are really different. So for Hamish, it usually looks like fixing something or coding. I don't know why coding is restful, but apparently it is. Or listening to a podcast. And again, those things are possible at the moment, but difficult because we're all in the same space. We are feeling quite claustrophobic. We're in lockdown. We're a little bit sick of the sight of each other, even though we do love each other. And I think the realization that I've come to is that in this context, in this cultural moment right now, lockdown, coronavirus, Sabbath is more important than ever. All of our souls feel a little bit sick and a little bit tired right now. We are weighed down by anxiety, by grief, and all of us need to figure out somehow what a pattern of rest looks like. So we're still working on that. We don't have all the answers, but I just want to give you like a quick summary of what I've learned so far about Sabbath, some of my top tips. So first one for us is that Sabbath means a change of routine. One of the reasons why I always force my children to get dressed, which is a bit mean, apart from at the weekend, is because I want our Saturday to be different. And actually staying in pyjamas for us is like a treat. And it helps for the girls to kind of demarcate that day as being different, as a day that's set aside for something. So we try and change routine on our Sabbath. The second thing is we have to plan our Sabbath to make it work. We have 2 small children and rest is not ever going to be automatic for us. We can't just be like, oh, let's all have a lie-in on a Saturday morning, because that is not going to work. So we have learnt that we need to think really carefully about what our Sabbath looks like. And we try and plan our Sabbath together and ask the girls what they want to do. So tomorrow we are watching Frozen 2, hooray, and making homemade pizza. And that's probably not my top choice of what to do on a day off, but actually that will keep our girls happy, which means that Hamish and I will be happy too. And yeah, the third thing is that Sabbath means no work, which sounds really obvious. And so one of the reasons why we chose Saturday is because Hamish doesn't work on a Saturday. But actually it's kind of harder than you think to not work, because we are contactable all the time now. Lots of us are working at home at the moment, and the compulsion to check your emails is really hard to resist. For me, kind of connected to the church, it's really hard to like stay off the church Facebook on a Saturday. But I think that is a really important thing. And I think part of that discipline is remembering that it is not our job to fix stuff, that God is the creator and sustainer of the world, and actually he loves us, but he doesn't need us. And that's quite hard to admit, that the world is not going to break down if I take a day off. That actually things are not going to completely crumble, because it's not my responsibility to look after everybody, and it's not my responsibility to fix stuff. That is God's responsibility. So on a practical note, on a Saturday, in terms of the not doing work thing, I try really hard to not do any housework. Again, it's difficult. We have small children. If no one did any housework on a Saturday by like 8:07, our house would look like a bomb exploded in it. But I do try really hard to not do any of the tasks that I do throughout the week. So on a Friday, I often do an extra load of washing, especially if it's sunny like today. And I try and think ahead about what we're going to have for dinner on a Saturday night. So either we get takeout or we get something out of the freezer, so that nobody has to cook and nobody has to kind of think about that additional stress. And even just those two things, like not doing a load of washing and not cooking, actually really helped me to view Saturday as being a different day. And the fourth thing, and again, this might not be for everybody, but for me, Sabbath means reducing my time with technology. Again, this is doubly important for us at the moment because in the midst of Corona crisis, technology is not always our friend. Zoom, WhatsApp, Facebook, FaceTime, all the other stuff the cool kids use, is all really amazing and beneficial, but it's also completely consuming. Like, social media has this ability to just consume us. And I'm finding it at the moment, it's impossible to keep track of all the messages. It's so hard to actually reply like meaningfully to stuff. I could spend all day, every day, searching for the perfect craft activity for my children and then realise I've actually spent zero time with my children because my face was just on my phone. And a part of Sabbath is about being present. And it's about being present in our reality, even if that reality is painful. This reality right now, it is hard, it is painful, but part of Sabbath and resting is being present to ourselves and present to God. And for those of us that live with others, being present to our families and our household. So on a Saturday, often, not always, and not as regularly as I would like, I try and turn my phone off. Sometimes I turn it off like at 8 p.m. on a Friday night till 8 p.m. on a Saturday night, and just have a day where I am exclusively like available for my own family and the people I live with, to commit that time to God, but to commit that time to being present with my kids. I'm not very good at it. I'm not very disciplined at it. But when I do it, my soul is so much lighter. Last night I was just feeling a bit overwhelmed, so just turned my phone off at 7 and didn't look at it again until 7 o'clock the next day. And even just that 12 hours without a phone, it actually was really refreshing for my soul. So it's a challenge to you, I guess. I'd say it's utterly liberating and also mildly terrifying, because you also realise that you are we are addicted to our phones. So finally, sorry, this is like a longer thought than I thought it was going to be. I just want to acknowledge and recognise that in the midst of these times, for some people, Sabbath is actually impossible. And for those on the front line, those that I mentioned at the start of this post, for key workers, NHS staff, single parents, vicars, it's really, really hard to take a break right now because the level of need is just huge. But I do think that Sabbath is worth fighting for. It is worth slowing down if we can. And it's worth doing whatever is necessary to attend to our soul's need to rest with God. And so I would urge those of us with more time and energy to think about the practical ways that we might enable someone else's Sabbath to happen. So if you're like a couple and you've got kids that might be thinking about, what do I need to do to make sure that my other half can have a break today? It works both ways. But for the rest of us, actually, what do we need to do to make sure that other people get to honour their day off? So maybe like not calling someone unless it's really urgent, avoiding the temptation to complain at people who are already overloaded. And maybe it's offering to get a neighbour's groceries, or maybe it's just something really simple like saying, I'm not going to book that click and collect slot, because even though it would make my day a lot easier, there's probably someone who's just on a night shift who just wants to come home and pick up their shopping and get into bed. And so leaving that slot available for them means that they can do that and they can have a rest, whereas we might not need it so much. So, just to finish, rest is really, really important. It's part of God's good design for humanity. I feel like a hypocrite talking about it because I find it really, really hard to rest. But God commands it. It's like one of the 10 commandments. It's really important. So let's just strive this week to put patterns in place so that we and others can Sabbath, that we can recover, we can recharge, and we can unburden our weary souls. I'm not going to do any blogs, any video blogs next week because it's Holy Week and I'm taking a bit of a break, but also because Tom and other people from our church have been working really hard to produce some amazing reflections for each day during Holy Week. So please connect with those next week, and let me just pray for us to finish. Father God, thank you so much that you are a good God who knows what is right for us. And Lord, I pray that over the next few days and weeks that all of us somehow would learn how to rest, that we would put rhythms in place that mean that our souls are recharged. And Jesus, I thank you that you said that anyone who was weary and burdened could come to you, and you promised that you would give them rest. Amen. Good night, everybody.